want to bring in James Carafano, VP of National Security and Foreign Policy at the Heritage Foundation. And James, just first of all, the importance of this trip for the president.
Well, presidents, we have a tradition of presidents visiting their troops in the combat zone. I think it was great that the president did that. I also thought, you know, what he said was really, really important. And I think this is the big problem. Nobody thought that having a permanent footprint in Syria was a good idea. It's a really dumb idea. And the president's right to want to transition out of that footprint. But what the administration didn't do, and what he actually did a very good job on this trip, is kind of explaining exactly how we're going to do that and how we're going to continue to protect America's interests. I think there was a lot of positives out of this trip that were really ignored.
I do remember when candidate Trump was running, and one of his criticisms was that he thought the military shared too much information about things like that. Our next move, what we're going to do, where we're going to be positioned. Is it possible that the administration has a policy and a plan, rather, but just doesn't feel the need to share it with the world?
Well, I think there's a middle ground there, right? I mean, you know, Roosevelt was very clear that we were going to reinvade Western Europe, and we were going from England and we were going to invade the continent, but he didn't lay out the plans of D-Day. So I do think that there's information that you can share to let people know that you have a plan in place that's going to work without giving away details that are going to aid the enemy. I actually thought Mattis's criticism in the letter was partially right. The notion is you have friends and allies, we need to speak clearly and consistently. And I get that the president is not a conventional statesman. I don't have a problem with that. But he runs the federal government, and the federal government has to send clear and consistent messages. And I do think the rollout of how we've explained what we're going to do in Syria hasn't been the best. The president, I think, was much, much better on the trip in Iraq.
All right, yeah, he was. And he talked about Iraq perhaps being the staging ground to provide cover for Syria. Although, again, you know, getting back to his role as commander-in-chief and being a civilian commander-in-chief, he promised Americans that we would get out of Syria. Now, what about Afghanistan? The idea of pulling out troops there. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's the same question. You know, we're not fighting a war in Afghanistan. This really angers me when people say that. The Afghans are fighting a war in Afghanistan. They are fighting and dying in big numbers to protect their country. We are largely in what's called an advise and support mission, and I think that's an important mission. But again, can you make adjustments to the force structure there and how you do it to try to make it more efficient for us and better support the Afghans? Sure you can.
James,
but when somebody just says the troops are leaving, that doesn't really tell you anything.
James, but you just said they're losing big, or they're losing a lot of troops protecting their own country. Is the reality that the Taliban is there to stay, and that ultimately there's got to be some sort of compromise made with them?
Well, maybe. You know, it's like somebody says, we got cancer here. This is a very difficult problem. I can't cure it. Okay. But I can give you a pill, and that can kind of keep the cancer in bay. Or you could stop taking the pill and just die. You know, I don't think there's a perfect solution.
Yeah, but they're taking the pill and the chemo, and they're still dying. And occasionally we do lose men and women there, and Americans wonder why. Afghanistan's been a lost cause for Westerners for a long time.
That is totally wrong. Okay, let me finish, right? Why are we in Afghanistan? One is so the country isn't overrun by the Taliban and we don't go back to another base for a 9/11. And two is so we don't have another failed state that destabilizes the region and impacts on allies like we have in India.
But is it a de facto failed state already?
Can we achieve that? No, it's not. Can we achieve that when an advise and support mission? Yes, we can.
All right.
Can we make
James,
adjustments to that? Yes, we can.
I love this conversation, but they've been yelling in my ear for the last 20 seconds. We got to pick it up, though. Thank you very much.
Happy New Year.